Oh, my friends, it is so good to be back here in this pulpit. As I said earlier, I have been on paternity leave since October 28th, 2020, when Sandra and I had our first child, Gideon Martin Teitel. Gideon is beautiful and he is thriving, and I am just so excited to introduce him to all of you just as soon as it is safe for us to gather together again. Gideon is named after a biblical hero who was born into a very difficult time and who rose to meet the difficulties of his time with courage and curiosity. I guess that's a lot to put on a kid, but I don't know. I think he's up to it. I might be biased, but I think so. And this is a difficult time. I feel like more often than not when I preach behind this pulpit, I say this is a difficult time, but these past few days have been particularly difficult. And right now, so you are watching a recording that was made on Friday, January 8th. My prayer is that the tragedies and the outrages that I'm about to be talking about are still the tragedies and outrages most immediately on our hearts by Sunday the 10th. This past Wednesday, January 6th, 2021, our nation's Capitol building was invaded and desecrated by domestic terrorists. They had been encouraged to go there by our president, Donald Trump. They were carrying Trump paraphernalia and Confederate paraphernalia. They were shouting Trump slogans. It was a hideous moment in our country's history. And so much has already been said about this event, and doubtlessly more will be said. So what I want to do is I want to tell you all this story that I believe speaks to the moment that we are in. This is a very old Jewish story about one of the greatest rabbis who ever lived. And, I, as a Jewish Unitarian Universalist, this is the kind of thing that I turn to when I am feeling the fear and the doubt that I think a lot of us are feeling. And so my hope is that this story might provide you with some of the guidance and comfort that it has given me. But a little bit of background before we get to the story itself. This is a story about an exorcism. While I was on paternity leave, I picked up this book, the Penguin Book of Exorcisms. Penguin Classics does these great compilations that I like to call the evil stuff compilations. Like, there's the Penguin Book of Hell and the Penguin Book of Witches, and they just came out with a Penguin Book of Exorcism. So I picked it up. How could I not? And I got super into it. I was especially interested in how widespread exorcism narratives are, right? We think of them as being sort of a Christian or Catholic phenomenon, but many religious traditions all over the world have stories about exorcisms because it's a spiritual truth that sometimes a person can feel like they are carrying around something deeply negative inside of them. And, we might call that thing a demon or a devil, or, I might want to call that thing hate or anger or malice or, a harmful motivation. But this can happen, and that this force can get into a person and it can hurt them. and hurt the people around them, and they just can't seem to get it out on their own. And it's so amazing to me that religious traditions all over the world recognize that one of the roles of religious community is to help that person and to help them free themselves from this negativity that has attached itself to them, or that they have attached themselves to. And so, given the state of our country and of our world, I think a lot of us might sort of feel like this, like we are carrying around something like this. I sometimes feel like our whole country is carrying a lot of negativity in its heart. We are living through this pandemic that is killing thousands of people every day. We are living in a time of division and violence and a breakdown of public discourse and of civic leadership. I want to really quickly, I'm going to show you guys a picture. Last month, Sandra and I, we wanted to take some nice Christmas pictures with Gideon, but, that's hard to do during a pandemic. We wanted to do it, in a safe, socially distant way. So we said, we're going to go to the big Christmas tree in the lobby of the Peabody Hotel in downtown Memphis, and we'll just take some Christmas selfies in front of that tree, because, the lobby's pretty spread out. We thought we can do this safely, and so we got Gideon all dressed up in this little outfit that we got him, and we drove down there, and he's normally a very calm child, but he simply just wasn't having it that day. So the picture you're going to see, this is the best, most usable thing that we were able to get. It's funny, we looked at it and we were like, honestly, that's 2020, right? Like he kind of looks how a lot of us feel. But in moments when we are all feeling the way that my son looks in that picture, it is the role of religious community to do our part to try and help each other and our world. So that's going to be the theme for this month. I'm calling this month Joy in the Morning, an Exorcism in 4 parts. And so each week we are going to be addressing one of these negative feelings, negative motivations that we are carrying around. This week we were going to be talking about anger, but I simply don't have it in me to try and tell anyone not to be angry right now, so we're going in a little bit of a different direction. There is no Unitarian Universalist exorcism tradition of which I am aware. I'm not really sure what that would look like, but I think it's worth trying to make one up, trying to make up some kind of a way that we might all try and look at what we've been carrying and see what are we carrying that is harming us more than it's helping us. And before everyone asks at coffee hour, I haven't seen the movie The Exorcist. I read the Wikipedia entry that described what happens in that movie, and I don't think that it's a thing that I need to see. So the story that I want to talk about is a story about a rabbi named Israel ben Eliezer, also known as Baal Shem Tov, and Baal Shem Tov is usually just abbreviated to Besht, or the Besht. The Besht was a rabbi who lived from the year 1700 until 1760, and he's considered to be the founder of the modern Hasidic movement, which is a movement of mystical Judaism. And the Besht was known as somebody who could perform miracles. My friend Rabbi Feivel Strauss, who helped me a lot with this sermon, Feivel talked about the Besht as someone who was deeply spiritual and wise, someone who could operate on a wavelength that not everybody could get to. And, for what it's worth, Feivel also said that, I should make sure I tell you all that I am the only person that he knows who would spend my paternity leave reading the Penguin Book of Exorcisms. But there you go. So the story takes place in a synagogue that has become inhabited by demons. And the demons were scaring people, and the rabbi of the synagogue, had tried to banish the demons himself, but instead of going away, the situation became worse, and the demons entered into and possessed the rabbi's 2 children. And so this rabbi realized that he needed help, so he called in the besht. And so the besht and his helper arrived at the synagogue, and they set up camp with these 2 children and waited for the demons to come. And the demons came quickly, and the first thing that they did was they started to mock the besht. They made fun of the way he sang the song, "Come My Beloved." This is a song that opens a Shabbat service, and it's a very joyful song. It's a celebratory song. So they were mocking his joy. They were mocking that he had a spiritual practice that was life-affirming and positive. And the besht helper immediately got scared and hid. But the besht was not scared. The besht confronted the demons. He challenged them even as they mocked him. It's this amazing, heroic moment. And then the story says the besht did whatever he did. And the demons fell down and could not get up. If you find the phrase, "he did whatever he did," to be a little, vague, a little anticlimactic, you're not alone, and we're going to talk about that. But just for now, we're going to go with that and say the besht did whatever he did, and the demons fell down, and so the besht commanded the demons to leave the children and to make them recover immediately. And the demons said, "No, we cannot make them all better. That damage has been done. They're lucky you showed up when you did." And the besht asked the demons how and why they came into the synagogue, and they told him there was a cantor in the synagogue, a person who sings in a Jewish service, and this cantor was an adulterer. This man, they said, was using his bass singing voice to get people attracted to him and to get them to think about him inappropriately, and that's how the demons came to be. And at this point, the besht decided he'd heard enough, and he sent the demons away to a place where people never go. So there's a lot there. This is an unusual story, and there's a million ways that one can interpret this. But what I want to do this morning is to try and look at this story as a model for how we might respond to the terrors of our time and to the hate that remains so visible in our country. I don't believe in demons that come and possess people myself. So I don't believe that, Donald Trump or the people who stormed the Capitol are demonic in some way, but I do believe that Trump and some of his more radical followers have been so overcome by hate and deception and by fear that they have lost track of who they really are and of what connects them to other people. And so they have started doing things just like the demons in the story. They've started to invade sacred spaces to try and scare people and to mock them. Right? And at first glance, it might be hard to look at the story and come up with a viable way to respond to this, right? Because the story, it doesn't provide a lot of helpful details. It literally just says he did whatever he did. But I think there's more going on than you might think, right? So the more traditional interpretation of that line, he did whatever he did, would be that, the knowledge of how to cast out a demon is not something that you show to just anybody, right? Only a very select few group of people are allowed to know exactly what that means, exactly what he did, and the rest of us just kind of have to live with this placeholder. But I think the other reason that it says that is that that's not the point of the story, right? The mechanical details of how this process worked, that's not why the author thinks that we need to know that this incident happened, right? And it's interesting when you think about, the gospel stories about Jesus. Whenever Jesus pulls a demon out of somebody, they never miss an opportunity to tell you about every little thing that Jesus did, because the point of those stories is to show you how powerful Jesus was and to communicate everything that he was able to do, right? The Gospels would never say Jesus did whatever he did, right? The same way that, you wouldn't have a comic book that showed something terrible about to happen and then just said Superman did whatever he did, right? But the point of this story is not to show us how awesome the Besht is. The point is to show how easily this kind of negativity can appear in a community, and possibly to show what kind of attitude we can have when we confront that negativity. Because what we do see from the Besht is his courage. We do see him facing down the demons while his friend totally wimps out and hides. This is, one of the amazing qualities that he had, is his ability to look evil in the face and not be afraid. And so he challenges these negative forces that have inserted themselves into his world, and they tell him they exist because this cantor was using his charisma and his abilities as a performer to engage in inappropriate relationships. They tell him that a person in a position of power was abusing that power, and that is how this trouble started. Right? This story teaches us that when we are faced with a situation where a person is causing harm by abusing the position of influence that they hold, our task is to face that situation bravely. Our task is to, as the story says, do whatever we do. And the story doesn't need to say exactly what whatever we do is, because that will vary depending on the situation. In the case of our country right now, it means voting, it means calling representatives, it means protesting, it means wearing masks, it means getting vaccinated. It can mean all kinds of things. And we don't need to list out every little thing that we did, because at the end of the day, it isn't about us. The story is vague on that point because knowing what to do usually isn't the hardest part, right? The hard part is doing it. The hard part is being brave. The hard part is not hiding, but asking questions and demanding answers and following through with what we know is right. So often in the past 4 years, we have seen people hide. People who knew how bad the situation was, just like the best friend who saw the demons and then put his head under a pillow. We've seen people hide who knew what the right thing to do was, but they didn't do it because they were too scared of the evil that was created by people who abused power. But our job as faithful people is to do better. Our job is to be brave enough to stand up and to send that hate and that violence back to the faraway, desolate places where it belongs. And our job also, just like the Besht, is to keep our young people close to us. On Wednesday, at around lunchtime, I was, sitting at Crosstown Concourse, drinking my tea and writing a very different sermon. When I heard the news about what had happened in Washington, and so I, packed up my laptop and I drove home and I went into my house and I picked up Gideon and I held him, and I sat there with Sandra on the couch holding my son, who was named for the arduous time that he was born into, and watching the horrors unfolding on the news. And I thought about Gideon and his future. And I thought about the young people of the Church of the River, who I love so dearly and who I haven't seen in almost a year. And I thought about these children in this story, these children that the Besht tried to help, but he couldn't ever fully undo the damage that had been done to them, and how unfair that is to them. And how terrified I am of what unfixable damage this time is doing that my children will have to inherit. And I thought, this is why we do this. This is why we do whatever we do to respond to the evils of our time. This is why we must be brave now. In the face of so much negativity and mocking and lies, we must protect the most vulnerable among us. We must realize what is ours to do. We must decide whatever it is that we can do, that we must do. And then, for the sake of everyone who we love, we must do it. Amen.